So this week's guest is a native of Chicago. He's a very Chicago guy. Served his country as a U.S. Marine for 7 years, and also then worked at the Chicago Police Department for 12 years. Kept the streets safe. He eventually went into television, and that's probably how you knew him. He started as a bouncer on the Jerry Springer Show, where he did a bunch of episodes also as the guest host, and then he eventually got his own show. He's now been doing TV for 30 years. This week's guest is Steve Wilkos.
The following is a Tony Lasano podcast, an Opie show on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. This is the Minutia Men Celebrity Interview with Rick and Dave.
Hello, Steve.
Yep.
Hey, thanks for doing the interview. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Can I get up right off the top here? Can I share a little complaint with you, Chicago guy to Chicago guy?
Sure.
I read the bio of you on IMDb, and you know what they say about you there?
He's a stroke.
They say you have a Chicago accent. Now, we know there's no such thing as that, right? That's just the way people talk.
You know, it's funny because when I lived in Chicago, for some reason, people said, "Are you from New York?" Right? And I'm like, "No, I'm from Chicago." And then when I'm out there, people are like, "Oh, you're from Chicago." I'm like, "Which is it, man?"
Well, I think you're the real thing when it comes to Chicago. I mean, you were a Chicago cop for 12 years, right?
I mean, I'm born and raised in Chicago. I grew up right by right in Roscoe Village. I went to Lane Tech High School, like, you know, right in the middle of Chicago. Like when I was in the Marines, I'd meet other Marines and I'd be like, "Oh, where you from?" "Chicago." And they're like, "Oh, I'm from Chicago too." And I'm like, "Where?" And they're like, "Kankakee." I go, "Dude, that's not fucking Chicago."
So Lane Tech, class of
82.
So were you still there when they made you do the nude swimming at Lane Tech?
No, but see, I grew up, you know, on Hoyne Street, right by Lane Tech.
Okay.
So they had the summer swimming, you know, and you had to swim nude. Because when I went to Lane, they had women, so we had co-ed swim, so you had to wear clothes, obviously, or, you know, swimsuit. But I remember going there, and I remember being, you know, I was probably like 8 years old or something, 9.
Yeah.
And we'd go, all the guys in the neighborhood, we'd go to swim naked. And even back then, I said, "Man, this is not cool."
Exactly. It's so weird. So in your wildest dreams when you were a cop, did you ever think you'd be hosting your own talk show, let alone for 18 seasons? I just thought 18 seasons.
I wake up every morning and I say the same thing. I still can't believe it. I've been doing it, you know, I've been on, you know, in a month I've been on TV for 31 straight years, and I still can't believe it because I actually woke up from a dream the other day, and I told my wife, and I said, I go, "Do you like, is it so crazy what we do for a living?" Like, because my dad was a Chicago policeman. You know, I followed my dad's foot. My dad was in the military, became a Chicago policeman, and, you know, did it for 30 years, and then retired and moved to Florida. And that's what I was going to do. I joined the Marines. I became a Chicago policeman. I planned on doing it till, you know, I got my pension, and, you know, and just a weird break doing security on the Springer Show just changed my whole life.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, the Jerry Springer Show, I was a radio producer here in Chicago during those days and met Jerry lots of times, had him on our show. A nice guy, gentle soul, almost a little embarrassed by what he did in his day job, but that show was a juggernaut. And you guest hosted it 50 times.
Yeah.
And were there for so many. I mean, were you there from the very beginning of that show?
No, I think the show the first year, 91, was in Cincinnati, and then 92 they moved to Chicago, and then I started on the show in 1994. So even when I started, the show was nothing. It was blah, you know.
Yeah.
And then it, you know, it took the turn where it went, you know, confrontational and stuff, and then it hit. So I was there, not from the beginning, but I was there before it became a hit.
I mean, some of those shows really went off the rails. Do you have any good stories? Like, I'm sure you get cornered all the time at like cocktail parties. And like, tell me a good Jerry story.
Well, it's like that studio. It's funny because I was telling my kids this over the summer. We went to Italy, right? And we were in Rome, and we saw the Roman Colosseum. And I said to my kids, the Jerry Springer Show was like the Roman Colosseum because people wanted to be fed like the fights, right?
Yeah.
Like they were bloodthirsty, our audiences in Chicago.
Yeah.
And like if there was no fight, everybody was disappointed, And that studio, like, and I've had my own show for 18 years, and we've had really remarkable moments in my own show. But when you're filming in Chicago and the studio was a little bigger and you had a lot more people in the studio, it was packed. And when things would go crazy and go up in the air, you couldn't even hear the person next to you. That's how loud that studio would get. And because I remember like the producers trying to get my attention, I'd be on stage and they're like screaming at me and I couldn't hear them because the crowd. And then, we'd have the Ku Klux Klan and those type of shows. And, then we had people like from the audience coming up and fighting. I mean, it was absolutely nuts.
Now, your show, I mean, it's a little bit like Jerry's, but I think your approach is obviously different. How do you compare and contrast the two shows and the two hosts?
Well, I say this. I think my show's nothing like Jerry's because we deal like the Springer Show, like Jerry used to say it all the time, was the circus. And it was basically love triangles. You know what I mean?
Right.
When I got my show, we were trying to figure out, okay, we're giving Steve Wilkos a show, but what kind of show? And, we could have went the lazy, easy route and like made it like another form of Jerry Springer. But my wife actually came up with the concept of the idea. And she said, listen, what are you good at? You're a policeman and you're a really good policeman. We're going to take you, the policeman, off the streets of Chicago and put them on stage. And you're going to deal with topics like that, like, sexual assault, crimes, theft. We've done murders. We've done missing people. We've done all kind of things, shows that a lot of policemen. Now we do the cheating story every now and then. We'll do a DNA. But basically our show is based in being a policeman. And where Jerry kind of was the funny uncle hosting a show, I'm the tough cop hosting a show.
Yeah.
So it's we had our different styles, and I thought that was really important to do something totally different than Jerry, so that people would say, "Oh, you're just doing the Jerry Springer Show." You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the tone is totally different, obviously, especially because, as you mentioned, your approach and his approach are so much different. What about on this show? Are there any great stories of things that have happened on your show over the years?
Well, the best thing that ever happened to me was this probably happened. I'm going to say it's about 10 years ago now, and we had a woman on who thought that her daughter was poisoning her. And she swore up and down. And then, the woman was, she didn't act like a nut job. She seemed really sincere about it and telling a good story. Well, then you bring the daughter on. She was this sweet, beautiful young girl. And she's like, no, I would never poison my. And I'm like, no way, this chick is poisoning her, her mom. Well, the girl fails the lie detector test. She did. She was poisoning her mom.
Wow.
She was pouring bleach into her orange juice. Well, the mother went crazy, right? And so I didn't even know, because here I do my set every time, but it's not like I'm looking around on my set. Well, there was a chest, like a wooden chest in the back. It had like a metal bowl on it. Well, this woman flipped out. She ran back. She grabbed the bowl, and she tried to throw it at her daughter, and she missed, and she cracked me right above my eye with this metal bowl.
Oh, my God.
I swear to God, I felt like I got shot in the eye. And I fell down to my feet, down to my knees. And I'm thinking, oh my God, so my wife came running on stage and, everybody's like, oh, you're going to jail, screaming at the girl. And I said, no, I'm okay. Okay. We finished the show. The girl admitted that she was poisoning her mother. And I got in my green room and the lawyers came in and they're like, oh, don't worry. We're going to take that out. I go, take it out. I go,
that's crazy
to leave that in. I said, they're like, do you want her arrested? I go, arrested. I go, send her a dozen roses, man. Are you kidding me? I go, this is going to be the highest rated show ever. And it was. It was our highest rated show ever. I said, you know how many people want to see me get hit? I go, that's a blockbuster.
That's awesome. Now, I mean, it's a bummer you don't do the show here in Chicago, but you're on the air every day here on the U on weekdays at 10 a.m. And I know you still come to town at least a few times a year. In fact,
do you know? But that's the sad. That's I don't live my life with regrets.
Yeah.
But I actually, even what you just said, I was thinking about it this morning when I was in the shower. I was thinking about how everything in my life would have been different if we didn't move, like if we would have stayed in Chicago.
Yeah.
And, you know, my life's been pretty good out in Connecticut. I'm not complaining. And my kids were really small, so they don't know any better. They felt like that's their home. But it's sad to me because I had such a great life here in Chicago, and it really just got ripped out from me like overnight, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, in a good way, right? In a way that, you know.
Yeah, at the time, though, it was hard to understand. It was in a good way, though.
No, I know. But so you come to town. Right now you're doing a fill a bag, fill a bus food drive. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I've been doing it for a few years now for WCIU. And, you know, listen, when I always believe when you're somebody like me who's in a really fortunate position and if you can appear at these things and drive some crowds there and have them donate and help this cause, like, you know, the most basic thing that every person needs in this world is to eat. And, you know, there's a lot of people that struggle with getting a meal. We see it everywhere. And so to come out here to be part, like, doesn't take, you know, if you told me we're going to set garages on fire in Chicago, come for the weekend, I'd be here, you know. But, you know, such a worthy cause, like, helping people get fed. It's a great cause, and people that come out, they're really generous, and it's just nice. And I love meeting people that watch my show. I really do. So, like, people come out, they're really nice. You know, ever since my show has been on the U, they've been very good to me. So it's just all around. It's a good time.
So I saw you come into town. Was it? I mean, must have been last year. Did you throw out the first pitch at a Cubs game?
Yep, May 16th, I believe it was, and that was another one of the highlights of my life because, you know, I grew up right down from the street from Wrigley Field, and I used to flip up seats after the game.
Me too.
Yeah, I used to get the low pass. You'd sit down the last row in the left field line, and flip up the seats, and you get a pass. And so that was my childhood, and you know, I remember when the first day of taping of my show. My wife gave me a present. She gave me wooden cufflinks that were made out of old seats from the old seats at Wrigley. And she said, you've come a long way from flipping seats at Wrigley, you know, and getting my own show. So it's a really nice moment. But it, you know, that was to go from flipping seats to actually throwing out the first pitch at Wrigley. I never thought that was going to happen.
So you still follow the Chicago teams?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I put it this way. I'm a baseball and real big football fan. I used to be a huge Bulls fan when Michael Jordan was on the Bulls.
Right.
I don't really follow basketball that much anymore, but I follow the Bears and the Cubs religiously, and I follow the White Sox. I'm not a White Sox fan, but I follow them because they're from Chicago, and I love baseball.
All right. Well, hey, thanks very much for doing this, and thanks for what you're doing with the food drive, and, you know, continued success. We'd love to see our fellow Chicagoans do as well as you're doing, and you're really a good representative of the city of Chicago.
Well, I really appreciate that. That's very kind words.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
There he is. Steve Wilkos. Boy, I tell you what, he is a good guy. You know, I've met him a couple of times. I didn't want to go into that, but you know, we met over the years, and he's a heck of a guy. And we have people we need to thank. First, thanks to Molly, his publicist, for scoring that, and Susan over at the U. We also want to thank our executive producer, Tony Lasano, with Opie Shows, and can't forget Ed Silla, the great Ed Silla, who is the distributor with the Radio Misfits. Great Talk Radio isn't dead. it just moved to a better place, RadioMisfits.com. And, this is the sort of thing we get to do occasionally. And we enjoy playing a game called Minutia Men Celebrity Interview, and we'll do it again soon.
The proceeding was a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. Find our other great shows on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and at RadioMisfits.com. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of Opie Productions.
Tony, can you shut up?